Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward and take it to the next level by helping others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as you know, on the Road to Rediscovery, we are passionate about delivering quality content that is of value to you and your personal growth. If you like what you hear, please visit roadtorediscovery.com/donate. That's road, the number two, rediscovery.com/donate. We'll give you a shout out in a future episode. And as always, there is no obligation. We are truly, truly grateful for your listenership. I have a question for you. How many of you have worked so hard to pursue a dream with focus, determination, and resolve, only to fall down over and over and over again? Many of us, right? Now, let me ask you this. How many of you have had this happen and then learn that God has another plan for you? Well, that's what happened with my special guest. She is a performing poet and professional writer from Columbia, South Carolina. After failing the certification exam 10 times in her pursuit to become a certified elementary school teacher, all the while working menial labor jobs, through God, she rediscovered that he had a different plan for her. And so her journey began as a poet and writer. She's been featured in the New York Times, Sheen Magazine, and winning multiple contests in global art and poetry. Let's welcome Traci Neal to the show. Hi, Traci. Welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you this: is it true that you knew you wanted to be a writer ever since you were 5 years old?
Yes,
Man, that's amazing. So, what drew you to want to become a writer at such a young age?
I just loved books. I loved the imagination that I gained from reading. And I tell people I get my writing from my mother. She has a
Hmm.
gift of writing as well. So
Hmm.
it was just always in me. And it never went away. Never.
Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. So, that was inspired by your mother, and uh, it's funny how things stick with us ever since we're a kid. We have, as children, we're very impressionable, right? But some things, kind of fall by the wayside, and we have other interests, and then some things just stick with us. And for you, apparently, writing has been that the case. So, uh, at what point did kind of writing transition to poetry? Is it you knew you loved to write, but then the next question is, what do you write? Right? I mean, for some people, it's jokes, it's um, um, outlines or short stories, or in your case, was it poems, or how did you make that transition from writing to poetry?
When I was younger, I kind of dibbled and dabbled in different genres of writing,
Hmm.
but poetry stemmed and emerged when I was a teenager.
Okay.
And so in seventh grade, my reading teacher had the class do an actual poetry book where we
Hmm.
had to write poems daily to create a book. And
Right.
so that just made me dive into poetry and I fell in love with it. And it just stayed with me. And
Hmm.
so when I turned 14, that was actually when I started performing my poetry
Nice.
with my mother's help.
Yeah.
She took me to the South Carolina Book Festival at the time, and they had an open mic. I was actually the youngest one in this rather medium sized room,
Right.
and so everyone was reading off of paper. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had actually brought my poems with me that day. And I guess my mother thought I was going to read off of paper as well. So she just like encouraged me to read one of my poems. But I actually went up there and performed. And so my mother confirmed to me, you have a gift. And so
Mm,
from there, it just never died.
beautiful, beautiful. So, what are the basic or main theme of your poems? Is it reflection? Is it life in general? What are some? What's the main idea or theme of your poems?
It's evolved. So before I read poems in the past that I wrote when I was a teenager, they were a
Hmm.
lot of self-reflection
Hmm.
because at the time I was dealing with bullying, low self-esteem. So
Hmm.
poetry was my outlet from that. So it was like a lot of self-reflection and learning of myself. But
Hmm.
now it's more of a call to action. So I use my poems to draw people to want to do better and be the best of themselves.
Very nice, very nice. So, um, I love how you clarified the evolution of your poetry, right? Because even though it evolved, it served a purpose, a true purpose in both ways, right? From being an outlet to getting past bullying, low self esteem, over to a call to action, especially in I would imagine in these days with all the different crazy stories that you hear going on in the country, in the world, you know, in society in general, right? Um, there is a need to call to action, and so I just want to thank you for for clarifying how your poetry has made that evolution, and so with that, okay, um, you performed, you wrote, and in your teenage years that's when you begin performing, and now you're reaching a time, I would imagine it's shortly after high school, that you begin pursuing your dream to become a teacher. um, how did that, can you explain for the listeners how, first off, how your um, what inspired you to become a teacher, and then talk about that journey and getting that certification.
Yes. And I will clarify. I thought that was my dream
Hmm.
at one point, and mainly because of my father's influence. My father is a retired high school teacher,
Mm,
same school over 40 years.
wow.
So we both had that ability to teach, and we both
Yes.
loved the youth. So I really wanted to make my dad proud. I'm a daddy's girl. So I thought this is a stable career and, something that I can do
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But during the times of college and transitioning out of college and still trying to pass this exam to be certified, it never happened. I felt like
Hmm.
it was kind of this blockage, like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that there was something more for
Uh-huh.
me than that. So finally, when I was 30 and I had failed for the 10th time, I had the courage to tell my father, I'm not going to take this test again. I'm going to go after my real dream to be a writer.
Very nice.
So,
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense. And so if we can just kind of slightly back up from that 10th attempt to, let's say, your fifth and your sixth and your seventh attempt, um, what kept you? Was it a mantra, or was it just a solid, just solid rock hard determination? But what kept you staying the course in pursuing teaching and taking that certification after that fifth time, that sixth time, that seventh time, more than the halfway point um, before you reached that 10th time?
well, actually, it's funny you say that because the fifth time is when I kind of wanted to transition and do something else,
Hmm.
but I didn't have the courage to, you know, tell
Yeah,
my father no.
yeah, yeah. No, I understand.
The honest truth that I really didn't have the courage to tell him
Hmm.
no. I didn't want to disappoint him.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
you know,
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense, and wow, as you're explaining this, Tracy, I can't help but say real quick that I can relate with you on so many levels when it comes to this. And three levels come up right off the top of my head. Okay. The first one is, my wife, she is a retired teacher and assistant principal, who was with Cincinnati Public Schools for 23 years. And so, from that level I can relate. And the second level is the number of attempts, right, that you have went to take this certification. Um, when I was a senior in high school, I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps, and my father served in the army, and I wanted to serve in the army right out of high school. But my big thing in high school was band. I was a musician, and so I wanted to join the army band. Well, to join the army band, you had to audition, and there's lots of sheet music, that you have to sight read for the first time and play it well to be accepted into the army band. And I got everything done that I needed to get sworn into the army, but the last thing I needed was to pass this audition. And my recruiter took me to this place to audition, believe it or not, 10 times. And I was able to reattempt after a week. So it was 10 straight weeks. And after that 10th time, I just thought, maybe this just isn't for me. And I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps in serving the country. So anyhow, those are the three areas that I can relate with you on. And it takes some vulnerability and some transparency, right? In opening yourself up to share that, to share that, yes, I failed, but that's the foundation to thriving, right?
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it totally is. So can you describe for the listeners, um, how did it all come about when you realized that God had a different plan for you?
I would tell anyone the shift for me was getting in the New York Times.
Mm,
So when I first started, I started my poetry business in January 2020 before
mhm.
the pandemic hit. And by the time the pandemic hit in March, I was on my first radio show. And I didn't stop booking myself for radio shows. I think August 2020 was my last one, but I had been on like 22 of them and booked myself.
Wow.
So
Wow.
so it's like, okay, I can do this. Let me try this. So it was
Mhm,
just like a constant, okay, let me see what else I can do type thing. And
mhm.
I had actually tried to get in the New York Times 3 times.
Wow.
The third time was a
Really?
charm, I guess.
Yeah, third's a charm for sure. It won't be 10 times.
Yes. But the funny thing with that was I saw the shift because instead of me in the past, like how I did before, writing about myself,
Mhm,
and kind of trying to boost my own head,
mhm.
I used it as an opportunity to be vulnerable
Yes.
and to hopefully inspire people to, like I said, the call to action.
Mhm,
And I felt good about it when I, submitted it because I talked
mhm,
about my rejection. I talked about how I use poetry as an outlet and
mhm.
encourage people to, let your rejection move you forward. And so that was like, to me, the light bulb going off that, this is beyond me. My words have power to influence people for the better. And that's what I need to be utilizing my poetry for, not to, boost my own head, but to really be effective in the world because there's a lot of negativity out there.
Yeah, there truly is a lot of negativity out there. And some people say words are just words, but I mean, it goes so far beyond just saying the word, right? I mean, there's inflection, there's intent, and I think we need to be more, um, uh, how can I say, critical and cognizant of how we use our words, right? And say, are we using our words for the betterment of society in helping others, or as a detriment, right? And you're definitely using yours as a betterment for sure. So, Tracy, I wanted to know if you can paint the picture for the listeners in um, in your journey of writing poetry and doing things like cleaning toilets and so forth. Because before you go into sharing that experience, um, I just want to share with you as a fellow Christian. Okay, um, whenever I believe I feel in my heart an anointing or a message from God to put me in another direction or to start a certain journey. Okay. I know, I feel it in my heart that that is what I'm being compelled to do by what God puts in my heart. Okay. But I also know that He never said it would be easy. The journey and the path is never promised to be easy. And so I wanted to ask if you can share with the listeners your experience in writing poetry, um, by night, maybe scrubbing toilets by day, however your schedule was, and what kept your eyes on the prize, so to speak.
So I'll start with that last question. What kept my eyes on the prize was my faith.
Hmm.
So just like I used poetry as an outlet, sometimes I would literally like write poems to God about what I was dealing with,
Hmm.
and being vulnerable to God. And so
Hmm.
by me being so vulnerable to God, I was able to be vulnerable with other people.
Hmm.
And I in the past when I was going through, scrubbing toilets, I changed diapers, I
Hmm.
did a lot of like what people would call servant roles, but I believe that God was using all of that for me to remember and never forget that I am a servant. And
100%.
and so but I needed to be broken in
Hmm.
order to understand that. So piggyback back when I was a teenager, I wouldn't have been a good leader, and as positive of an influence now.
Hmm.
I'm sorry if I get emotional.
That's okay.
Um, I wouldn't have been good for anyone
Hmm.
because I was very selfish,
Hmm.
greedy. I wanted it to be about me, and I felt like my poetry was, limitless. Like, I was untouchable,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's not what God had given me the gift for.
No.
And so I feel like in those 10 years and me failing 10 times, he was breaking that attitude, that character out of me.
Yes, yes.
So that I could be what he really wanted me to be and show people that you can be inspirational, you can be influential, but do it for the right reasons.
Right.
And he'll exalt you. He'll,
Yes.
take you higher.
Yes.
And so for me, I'm grateful for every toilet I scrubbed.
Hmm.
Um, and and now it's like I can feel people's pain. I can feel people suffering because
Yes.
I've been through it.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when I see it,
Hmm.
I have that power and that influence to call it out and say, be mindful of how you treat people. You don't know what
Yes.
they're going through,
No.
and you can be that voice to, just brighten someone's day. And I like to give an example. And it does, some people think it has to be money. It's
Hmm.
not always about the money. It's just it can just be you, what you
That's
do.
right. That's right.
And so a few weeks ago I was on vacation with my family on my husband's mom's side.
Hmm.
And we went to this outlet, this major outlet that was outside, and I had to use the restroom.
Okay.
And this young lady was in there cleaning the bathroom, and she was doing a really nice job. It smelled really good in there,
Hmm.
and I could just feel her spirit. You know,
Yes.
whatever you believe, people give off vibes, and I could just feel her spirit. And it was so positive. So I just told her, I said, "You're doing a really good job. The bathroom smells really nice." And she ended up saying that, I really like your shirt. And I said, I like your smile, and I just felt good,
Hmm.
you know, and I kind of had an emotional moment. I'm
Sure,
mushy,
sure.
y'all can't tell.
No, no, I
But
understand.
I just had kind of a moment because I remember, and I remember people just looking over me and, not being appreciative.
Yeah.
So I'm compelled to
Mm.
just, when I see that, to just
Yes.
go out of my way to tell people that serve that you're appreciated, that I see
Yes.
you, and that you matter.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that means a lot to me.
Yeah, 100%. I can tell. I can tell in your words how much it means to you, Tracy. And I really, really appreciate you sharing this experience with the listeners. Yeah. Whenever I feel something in my heart to that I believe someone, a total stranger, even someone, needs to hear something. I say it, I express it, but at the same time, I also know and recognize, again, as a fellow Christian, that's God working through me, right? To Him goes all the glory. So that's Him working through me, putting it on my heart to tell this person you're doing a good job, to tell this person, I like your smile, right? And it's not always about money. You can show acts of random kindness in so many different capacities, just as you have expressed and given a true example. So, thank you so much for sharing that. And here on the Roads Rediscovery, we have what I call the four cornerstones to personal growth. And those four cornerstones are self-awareness, gratitude, humility, and service to others. And so, I mean, you have truly, truly articulated your experience and the importance of service to others and humility in this conversation. So, I just want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that experience for the benefit of the listeners.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, what is the main, well, I'm sure you learned many things about yourself, but what is the main thing you've learned about yourself or continue to learn about yourself through this experience that you've gone through?
Um, just my ability to listen more.
Hmm.
Sometimes we're quick to be like, oh, this is what I think, this is my opinion, these are my thoughts. But I find that when I listen more, that people are more receptive of me.
Yes, and have that empathy, right? Putting yourself in their shoes, understanding that, they may not be having a good day, and giving them that grace, just as, as you wish or would like to have, demonstrated with you. And sometimes we don't always get that. But I guess the part of the divinity I feel that God gives upon us is for us to continue to be that way anyway, right? Whether someone is like that or people are like that to us or not, but to continue to give, goodwill and give smiles and give words of affirmation and just pleasant words and expressions to our fellow human beings. So yeah, that's a tremendous thing to learn, Tracy, over the years. It really does, and it really is, and it's amazing that learning something as that. Two things. Number one, um, is harder for some people than others, and two, once you have achieved that, or at least have the self awareness to discover it, it can really transform your life, can it? Yeah,
It can be a game changer.
it can, big time. It can definitely be a game changer for sure. So, wanted to ask you because I believe you part of your poetry, which is, like you said, a call to action, but you like to share stories and poetry to inspire the youth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. So, what are some of the life lessons from your journey and your writings that you want to share with the youth to inspire them?
So through my children's books series I started called
Hmm.
Lynn Learns Lessons,
Hmm.
it's going to be 10 books. I've already written two, and I'm working on my third one. But
Nice.
basically, it's lessons that I learned throughout trying to become a certified teacher, failing, and just letting the youth know that they're not alone. So
Yes.
the target readers are 8 to 12 years old, third through fifth grade,
Hmm.
because I feel like that's a very critical age. That's like a transitional age group
Yeah.
that I feel is forgotten. So I call them my forgotten ones, but
Mm,
I want them to know they're not alone and that I care and I see them.
gotcha.
And it's very interesting because last year is when I started going around the community to read my books
Hmm.
to the youth.
Hmm.
So last year I was able to read at the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands, all nine of their facilities.
Hmm.
And so I got to read my books and inspire the kids to go after their dreams. And many of them share with me their dreams. And I told them that I believe in their dreams. And it has just been an amazing experience. And this year I was able to go to a foundational camp near where I live, and got
Hmm.
to speak to the girls group and boys group separately, and that was
Hmm.
pretty interesting because girls and boys are different, and
Yeah, yeah, they are different.
you have to have that flexibility to
Hmm.
handle, both ones. But
Yeah.
it was really fun, and so for last year, I always ask the same question: who can stop you from achieving your dream? And I'm always amazed at some of the answers they give. My daddy, my employer, something random and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And this particular school that I went to, this boy said, I think it's me. I think
There you
I'm the
go.
one that can stop me from achieving my dream. I said,
Right.
okay. And he like, damn. It was funny.
Daft.
Yes,
He gets the
it was
gold
really,
star.
yes, it was really fun. And so when they get it, like when that light bulb goes off, that
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody can stop me from achieving my dream. If I believe it's real for me, I can do it. And
Mhm.
so it's just inspiring. And this year when I went to the camp, I actually went with my mother, and so she got to see, how I interacted with the kids, and she was so
Mhm.
proud.
Mhm.
So that was really amazing just to see the influence. They
Yeah.
just met me, and to, welcome me and feel that they can do something is just that no amount of money can, pay for that.
So true. No amount of money. You establish a connection, and the children are engaged. And so you have to build that equity to have a connection of trust, right? And just a good, healthy relationship. To exchange information and to listen to each other, and that's the foundation that it sounds like you have established with these youth, in order to be inspiring to them. So that is absolutely wonderful, Tracy. So early on, did I hear or did I sense that um, you were a little apprehensive to public speaking at one point?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't
Okay.
I mean, it's different. I know people think that, well, you do poetry and stuff, but this it's to me it's not the same thing.
Right.
Um and I didn't know how I would be received.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like last year when I first was going to these different schools. It was kind of scary, you're just
Yeah.
like sink or swim. And
Yeah.
so for me, I just realized that just like in the classroom when I was trying to be a teacher and I was able to connect with the kids, I can bring that same energy into, different avenues. So I
Hmm.
tell people I'm still a teacher. I just teach beyond the classroom.
Gotcha. So that was a contributing factor in helping you transition to public speaking. It sounds like
Yes.
taking principles and taking best practices that you have done on a regular basis in the teaching space and moved it over to the public speaking space. And like you said, teaching, still teaching, just beyond the classroom, and a lot of it is, of course, verbally, right?
Yes.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. So, Tracy, how can the listeners connect with you, learn more about you, follow you, and even, pick up a couple copies of your first two books if they're available? How can they just learn about the inspiring work that you're doing?
Yes, I tell people my website is the easiest way to get in touch with me. It is
Okay.
my one-stop shop, and that's
Mhm.
Traci Neal speakerpoet.com.
Traci Neal, speakerpoet.com. We will put that in the episode show notes so the listeners can access your website while listening to this wonderful conversation. Tracy, you, I know without a doubt, continue to inspire, motivate, and bring smiles to the faces of our youth and to people all around the world. I wish you the best in continued success with your poetry, with your writings, with your books, and our children. As the song goes, our children, they are the future. Right, they are the future, and with so many troubling, just corrupt uh, things going on and events going on in this world, you are a beacon of light to be shined across all dark parts of the world to bring sense of hope and inspiration as you're doing in your work. So, Tracy, I want to thank you for the great work that you're doing, and I also want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your journey with the listeners.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And look, if you have a loved one or a colleague or coworker, close friend or neighbor who just doesn't seem to be themselves lately, maybe they're down and out, just going through dark days of despair, maybe resorting to bad habits, addictions, and so forth. I humbly ask that you please share this show with them because on the road to rediscovery, we want our listeners to know two things. Number one, you're not alone. And two, there is always, always hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life. And it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have. The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.